Good morning and welcome to our second session in a six-part series of Coffee and Conversations. My name is Nicole Wells and I am the System of Care Project Director at the Achievement Center, which is Elk Valley's lead partner in the Community School Initiative. I'm so glad that you've tuned in bright and early for today's discussion, Am I Enough? Managing Frustration and Stress to Get It All Done. Today's discussion will briefly explore frustration and stress management techniques for parents, ways to intervene with negative or unwanted behaviors by responding, not reacting. We'll talk about the power of letting go of perfection to alleviate stress. And lastly, we'll discuss some available resources. So let's dig in. How many of you think that parenting should come with some sort of stress management manual? Right? I think it goes without saying that there are challenging moments regardless when you're raising a child. And while it can be enormously rewarding, it's also very stressful. From the time the kid is born, we are bound to face parenting situations that leave us feeling angry, frustrated, worried, or maybe otherwise just stressed out. Changes in life, even the positive ones, can be really stressful, especially if you can't cope. But with the proper stress management techniques and plenty of practice, parents can learn how to better keep their cool. Our work as parents is a high stress job, and it's really no wonder that tantrums of toddlers or rebellious teenagers can push any parent over the edge. And learning how to manage stress can really give us the patience and the energy, a new perspective even, to become the parent that we want to be. Not to mention, managing stress is just overall beneficial to our health and to our own ability to function. So let's talk about some basic frustration and stress management techniques. What I'm about to share with you isn't rocket science. It's simple tips for finding balance and managing stress. First, drop stress at the door. So if you're a working parent or you just have a really active social life, try to leave that stress where it belongs. Don't bring it into the home. Spend a minute talking to a friend on your drive home from work, or vent to a coworker, or before you leave the office to help defuse your work stress. Maybe even take a deep breath or play some calming music so that when you get home, you can really direct all your energy to your home life. It's really important that children know that you are fully present for them. Next, have fun. Laughing and learning to live in the moment with your children is a great way to relieve stress. So take time to jump in on silly things your kids do, even if it's just for a moment. Your stress and your worry is definitely still going to be there, but research shows that when children act, they'll act out less for your attention when they feel connected to you, even if it's only for a minute, right? Quality time versus quantity of time. So make sure that you say yes to having fun. Next thing, take time to relax and recharge. We talked about this last session, but it's super important for us to take time for ourselves as parents. You know what works best for you, whether that be reading a book, going for a walk, having an intense workout, doing yoga, taking deep breaths, whatever it is, make time for it. And make sure that on top of that, you get a really good night's sleep so that you stay recharged. Next, ask for help. This is another thing that we talked about last time, but it's a really big part of managing stress. It's just knowing when to ask for help. Trying to be super mom or super dad just seems like a recipe for unnecessary stress, and no one really benefits from a stressed out parent. So you'll make better decisions, and you'll be more fun to interact with when you're well rested and you're taken care of. Next, use your natural supports. Find time to connect with other parents who get it, right? I'm certain that you'll find that you're not alone and that other parents are feeling just as stressed out as you may. So connecting with other people can really normalize the feelings that you have of stress. And anytime that you have a trusted network of friends or family members to talk to, it can make all the difference in a high stress moment. When you feel like you're really reaching your limit, try to call on somebody and seek support, because this will allow you to take a step back from your interactions and regain your composure. Lastly, this seems so simple, but yet so hard for some of us to do. Say no. The key to finding balance and reducing stress is to avoid overscheduling ourselves and to focus on the positive. So staying positive during stressful life moments will benefit you and your family. So instead of letting yourself get angry and frustrated when faced with a difficult situation, try taking a more positive approach, learn to say no, eliminate extra activities that cause chaos in your family's routine, and just calm it down. Remember that our kids are like sponges and they see and they hear everything. Children are going to model how their parents behave, including those behaviors related to managing stress. So, research really tells us that parents who deal with stress in unhealthy ways risk passing those behaviors on to their children. But the good news is that the parents who cope with stress in healthy ways, they promote a better adjustment and happiness for their kids. So, keep that in mind. Let's shift gears and talk about what our children are trying to tell us through their behaviors. I think sometimes it can be challenging to understand our kids' behavior or to even know how to respond to them. But our children are capable of understanding and doing things based on their development, their experiences, and the skills that they've been taught. So in other words, the types of experiences our children have paired with what they know impacts how they'll behave. So in order to address this idea of how do we react versus respond as parents, I want to pause here and just ask you each to reflect on, you don't need to answer, but just reflect on, why do you think your children misbehave or act up? I think the fact here is really that young children's challenging behaviors, especially those kids under the age of 8 years old, they're not necessarily wrong. Why, you might ask? Well, because children are still growing and learning. They're still learning how to behave. They're still learning how to deal with other people. They don't yet understand how the world works and what's expected of them. So it's important to understand what's age appropriate so that you know what you can expect from them and you can be more realistic, more patient, and more calm when responding to their behaviors or their needs. So why do we as parents define misbehavior as challenging behavior or even bad behavior? Well, I think it's really because it challenges us as parents, right? It challenges us to understand them and to respond to them the best way we can. And if we're honest with ourselves, we don't always know what to do or what to say, do we? So our job is to help them learn positive ways to live within their families, in their schools, and within the community, and to help them understand that their mistakes or their misbehavior can be harmful to others at sometimes. I just want to remind you that here I'm specifically talking about children who are 8 years of age or younger. Older kids really know more and they can be held to different expectations. So just keep that in mind. I've been talking about responding versus reacting, and I just want to pause here and clarify. When I say the word react, I'm talking about when we express the first word or we act on the first thing that comes to mind without much thought. So we react based on our emotions in that moment. So for example, and this is a little extreme, but just stay with me. A baby's crying, the mom feels frustrated, she starts yelling at the baby doesn't stop crying, so she shakes the baby, okay? When I say the word respond, I'm really talking about when we as parents or adults take the time to calm down and think about the reasons for the child's behavior and decide on the best action to take based on our thought and our time and our sense of calm. So if we go back to our baby example, the baby cries, we check on the baby, we say, is the baby hungry? Is it hot? Does it need a diaper change? Is it sick? And then maybe we hold the baby and try to calm him or her down. So that's the difference between responding versus just reacting to a child's behaviors. So why do our kids act the way that they do sometimes? Well, behavior is communication. So it's always best practice when raising young children to ask yourself, what is my child trying to tell me by doing what they're doing? I think it's important here that you understand that children usually try to communicate to you what they need or that they need a basic need met. So I think that we all do this, right? It's just our human instinct, but it looks very different for a young kiddo to say that than it does for an adult. So they might act out to express their needs for things like safety, right? Kids want to feel loved, protected, and accepted. Kids want relationships. They want to feel attached to their family and to their friends and to feel good about those relationships. Kids want to trust the people around them, especially their parents and their teachers. And lastly, kids want to know that their basic physical needs are going to be met. And when these things don't happen, that's when we see more misbehavior, more acting out. Why? Because they're trying to tell us something. So keep this in mind the next time your young one acts out. So understanding what children can do and they understanding this, that we have to change the way that we respond to them and our expectations as they grow. Some of you can probably relate to this. When we're thinking about consequences or ways of handling situation, some of the things that we used to do that worked when they were younger don't necessarily work as they've gotten older. So some example might be that now that they're unfazed by you saying, go to your room, right? Maybe that was highly effective when they were a toddler, but now that they're a little bit older, they don't really mind going to the room, and it seems to be more fun. I think just regardless here, we need to remember that we have to respond to behaviors and not react to them. And this will keep that parent-child bond really strong and maintain a respectful relationship between you as the parent and them as the child. And if we think about compliance and getting a kid to do what we want them to do, respect is really at the root of all of that. If I respect you, then I'm more motivated to please you, so I'm more likely to listen to what you're asking me to do, right? They go hand in hand. But a good way to do a self-check and to make sure that you're responding and not reacting to any situation is to use this acronym here, RETHINK, right? So the R stands for recognize. Recognize what makes you angry or stressed about the child's behavior or about a certain situation. E, show empathy. Your child has feelings about whatever is happening too, so try to understand those feelings. T, think about what positive things are happening in the situation. For example, you might be frustrated that your child just broke a plate because they were not paying attention and trying to play a handheld game at the same time that they were putting their plate away on the counter. But the positive thing here and the positive perspective that you could have is that your kid was actually making an effort to put their plate away, right? So we'll deal with how they did it later, but just think about the positive things that are happening in the situation. H, hear what the other person is saying to you. When we get mad or stressed out, we're not the best listeners, let's just be honest. But we need to remember to try to hear the other person's point of view. I, think about including I messages here to express how you're feeling about a certain situation or behavior. So for example, I feel worried when you leave the house and don't tell me where you're going. I am scared you'll fall off the counter when you're climbing around, right? N, notice how you're feeling in your body at the moment. Try not to respond to your child when your body is feeling tense or agitated. K, keep your attention on the present situation. When you're correcting a behavior at a specific time, don't bring up things from yesterday or last week when addressing it. Just do one thing at a time. Keep in mind here that stress really impacts our parenting, especially when it is the first thing on our minds and it's really weighing heavy on us. Parents who have high stress demonstrate less warmth, lowers levels of responsiveness, less affection, and they're more likely to use discipline that is either harsh or uninvolved. They're also more likely to use controlling tactics to get their kids to obey them. So focus on lowering your stress level and using more positive parenting behaviors such as warmth and being sensitive and listening to your child and just trying to understand them. That'll go a long way. Now let's explore this idea of the power of letting go of perfection and how it relates to stress management. Here's a quote by Anne Lamott. She said, "Perfection is the voice of the oppressor, the enemy of the people. It will keep you cramped and insane your whole life." I think here, as if parents don't already have enough stress and things to worry about, our culture puts a ton of additional pressure on us to be perfect. And so it makes sense to feel and to think that perfection can be our enemy, right? Because it seems untouchable. We're made to think and feel that there's something wrong with us if we're maybe still single by a certain age, or we don't make a certain amount of money, or maybe we don't have a big social media following, or we don't even look a certain way. In the midst of all that pressure, it's really easy to forget all the great, unique things about ourselves. So the point here is to really focus on positive thinking, positive self-talk to make things easier in stressful times. For example, in a stressful situation, you might think, what's wrong with me? I can't get things together. I'm a loser. This type of, negative self-talk just really isn't helpful to anyone. So let go of the idea that you have to compete with others or you have to find perfection. I want to close with some song lyrics from a song called Buildings and Bridges. Buildings and bridges are made to bend in the wind, to withstand the world. That's what it takes. All that steel and stone are no match for the air, my friend. What doesn't bend breaks. What doesn't bend breaks. I think here on, when I read this, on an almost daily basis, each of us encounters problems that we have to solve, questions that we need to answer, decisions that we have to make. There's just really a pile of things that we need to accomplish. And every day requires us to navigate quite a bit of stress. So as the song suggests, we have to bend with what life brings us in order to avoid breaking. If you're a parent, in addition to handling your own issues, you also have to keep an eye out on your child and to help him or her learn how to handle stress with grace and with competence. So each child is born without any ability to deal with frustration or solve problems, and it's really up to us as parents to model and teach our child how life should be lived. So teach them to bend so that they don't break during stressful times. Almost done here. Just a short review of all of the school and community resource that you and your family have access to, keeping in mind that Elk Valley Elementary School is a community school, which means it serves as a hub of resource for the community in which you live. Things like a food pantry or a clothing closet, even academic support or extended school activities. So don't be afraid to reach out to your community school director and see what all your school has to offer. The community at large throughout Erie County has a wealth of resources. We're really fortunate to live in this area and be highly saturated with services and supports. Starting off with the lead partner for Elk Valley, which is the Achievement Center. We service children up to the age of 21 who need mental health and behavioral health services as well as with their families. The United Way of Erie County has a 211. You can text it, you can surf the web, or you can call it. It's a great place to start if you have no idea what exists throughout the county or what you might need. You can talk to a trained resource coordinator on the other end and essentially just tell them your story. And as you talk, they're typing in keywords and connecting you with resources, things from free tax preparation to help with utilities to shelters or drug and alcohol services, mental health care, really anything that you or your family or friends may need. The Department of Human Services of Erie County launched eriesprout.com. It's a website that you can search for drug and alcohol programs, shelters, adult mental health or behavioral health services, so check that out. Erie County Care Management and Community Care Behavioral Health are both great resources. If you're not sure what will be covered by insurance for mental health, behavioral health, drug and alcohol, supports coordinators, or case management services for you, your child, your family, or your friends. And then lastly, Crisis Services at UPMC Safe Harbor has a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week crisis on-call that can be reached by 814-456-2014. People of all ages can call that number around the clock and receive services or supports for an active crisis. And finally, we're here to help, and Elk Valley really cares about its students and its families, so reach out if you need anything. Here is a list of the guidance counselors' email addresses along with your community school director, Tammy, and my information is there as well. So don't be afraid to reach out and find out what is available or to even ask whatever questions you might have. Thanks again for joining us today. Hope you can join us next week.